National Hockey Podcast, brought to you by the Hockey Writers.
Welcome back to the National Hockey Podcast, brought to you by the Hockey Writers. I'm James Nichols, and as always, I'm here with my good buddy John Zella. What's up, pal?
Shaking off the last week of Islander hockey. It's been a rough one, despite collecting 2 points over the weekend, but we'll get to that in a little bit.
Yeah, and we're also joined by our official third member of NHP, AM New York's Joe Pantorno. What's up, buddy?
Gentlemen, hanging in there, snowed in, forced to be stuck with my feelings and thoughts about, like we said, that last road trip. So it's been a little daunting on the mental health, I won't lie.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been shoveling all day. It's been not fun. But before we jump into our NHL news, John, we have a new partner at NHP. Do you want to tell us a little bit about them?
We do, and I'm really happy to welcome Amity Harbor Sports and Long Island Hockey Company as supporters of the show and partners, and we're going to do a lot of cool stuff. So we're really excited. We had a couple of really good conversations with them, and we really can't look for what am I trying to say here? This is not going smoothly. We're looking forward to partnering with them. Some cool stuff on the way. I've been going to Amity Harbor my entire life. I think I bought like pretty much all my equipment as a kid there. They're the reason I'm the hockey player that I grew up kind of loving hockey. I remember I feel like I can picture going into the shop and seeing the jerseys. It was their old shop on Montauk Highway. I can't remember if it was like Bayshore or whatever it was. It was a little further down Montauk Highway, and I remember the jerseys hanging, and I remember getting. Do you remember the World versus North America All-Star games?
Yeah.
Like I think I got my I don't know why I got a World jersey. I don't know why I didn't get the North America one. I think maybe I just liked white and blue, but I remember I got that there. I remember, like I said, I bought all my equipment there. I stopped by for a long time. I still used wood blades because I'm 100. And they were like the only spot that had them for a long time. So I used to pick up my wood blades there. They had it was like a milk crate on the floor next to all the really good stuff. Anyway, it was fun. I like going there. I love being in sports stores, and they do a lot for the community. They also have this lifestyle hockey brand, Long Island Hockey Company, which is kind of the name brand of the rinks in Hauppauge. If anyone skates out of there, that's where I skated out of. For high school and travel and stuff. They make some awesome merch. Their graphic designers are fantastic. They incorporate a lot of vintage logos from the NHL and stuff like that. And they have a great selection of baseball gear in their shop on Merrick Road. So definitely check them out at Amity Harbor Sports and at Long Island Hockey Company on Instagram, or their physical shops at the rinks in Hauppauge, like I said, or at 149 Merrick Road in Amityville. They've been in business a really, really long time. It's a family-owned joint, so shop local, get your cool Long Island hockey merch, and like I said, look out for some cool collaborations.
Yeah, excited for what's to come. It's going to be a good relationship. I'm excited to get going. But
yeah, I'll apologize to them in an email about how I botched the beginning of it, but I feel like I saved it at the end. We haven't done an ad read in a while, so
it's been a little bit. Bit.
Yeah, this is like a genuine I love this store kind of thing. So I was like trying to make it from the heart. I didn't want it to be this kind of like written thing. But definitely check them out. They're really cool.
Yeah, for sure. But let's get to around the NHL. A couple storylines have developed over the past week. First being, guys, I cannot believe the level of Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl's play as of right now. It's astronomical, and I don't know if that has a lot to do with the division that they're playing in. Maybe the competition is just not as good, but I'm not going to take anything away from McDavid and Draisaitl's game. They're on a literal another level right now. Put it to you this way. The Ducks roster through 41 games combined has a total through 10 games combined has a total of 41 points. McDavid and Draisaitl alone have 43 points in 11 games played. So that tells you how good they're doing right now. I think, what was it, 2 nights ago, as you're listening to this, they beat the Senators 8-5. What a game. What a game. So Draisaitl and McDavid are taking it to, I don't even know what that next level is. It's like they're bored. Sport. That's what I'm saying.
They're not
like,
playing. I don't know what
they're bored with the
NHL.
It's like, what's better than this?
what's the old saying? We're playing checkers and they're playing like 3D chess. That's really the
They're
way.
the computer chess is
Yeah.
what's happening. They're just like they're the technology and they've taken over hockey.
Yeah.
They just figured it out.
Wave of the future.
So it leads me to the question, though. Do we think anybody's going to hit 100 points this season? I mean, it's a shortened season. If not 100, what's the highest we think it's going to get?
I mean, you have to average what? Just about 2 points per game to get to that that 100-point mark. And listen, I mean, if anybody's going to do it, it's going to be one of these guys.
Absolutely.
Really, that's what it is. I mean, at the beginning of the season, maybe you're like, oh, maybe Nathan McKinnon can, and because the Avalanche are so deep and potent, and they can come at you everywhere, and it'll just leave space for Alex McKinnon to get his. But really, it could just be that perfect storm of, like you alluded to, the division that they're playing in right now and the level that they're at, where it's just they're making the rest of the Canadian division look like JV. And it's a shame because the rest of their team is also kind of JV. But
they're scoring on 50% of the team's goals, right? The two of them. What's the rest of the team doing?
Nothing.
They're watching like us. They're just watching.
Yeah. I mean, did you see the highlight of McDavid's break? It wasn't even a breakaway goal. He went coast to coast, like one of his 50 other highlights that he has. But this one, I mean, he just bobbed and weaved through all 5 of the defenders. It was ridiculous.
Do you want to get on a tangent? I don't know how long it's gonna go, but do you want to get on a tangent really quick?
I don't know. I texted you guys the other day when I saw that clip of McDavid, and I every time I watch McDavid skate, I'm like, Barzal is that fast. Why can't he be that
there's that
good?
too.
It's just 2 different players, man.
It's between the ears, and really, it's they've talked about it. Growing up, we've talked about the transcendental stars of hockey. The Lemieux and the Gretzkys, and even the Crosbys, I guess, and the Ovechkin in terms of the pure scoring. But when it comes to just an all-around, overwhelming offensive talent, where it's between the ears here, where basically he can turn it on and off like a switch, where it's just like, okay, I'm just going to decide to just take on a whole team by myself, and he can just do it.
We need a goal. I'm just gonna go do that real quick.
I don't know that he's quite on that level, and that kind of brings me. We're not going to go through puck soup style and like tiered all these players and try to figure this out. But what I wanted to ask is, comparing Crosby in his prime, truly in his prime, not when he was young, but like whatever age you want to choose, mid to late 20s or something, versus McDavid. I'm not saying who's better, but is there? I feel like maybe I am asking who's better. I feel like they're a little bit different players, but they both provide that cheat code. James, you say that all the time.
Yeah.
It's just a different level where they think the game differently. They think the game faster. Maybe not differently. It's just they see the moves. Like they're like an F1 driver. They know exactly what they need to do and when to speed up and when to let go, because you see the stutter steps and you see these the shoulder moves and where they're placing their feet and all this stuff. And it reminds me a lot of Crosby, who was like, you can't even touch this guy. He's just on a different level. And not to say like McDavid is as good as Crosby. I think it's just there's this A1 tier of player that I don't even know that Ovechkin is necessarily on that kind of level. But you know what I mean? Like you're saving that for the Lemieux and the Gretzkys and the McDavids and the Crosbys. And like, I don't know that Barzal, points aside, I don't know that Barzal's game warrants like that kind of elevation to that level. I think it's a different style of game. Like I don't know that it's necessarily like.
I just don't think he's put it together, and I don't know if he ever will. But I think the potential is there.
He doesn't have the finish, and he doesn't have that mindset of putting it together. And listen, Barry Trotz has alluded to it for the last couple of years now, where he's always been that kind of pass first guy. Where he can't really, he hasn't been able to find that 50-50 balance. We're starting to see it trend in a different direction now this year, because I think he's finally come to the realization that, as I go, so does the Islanders offense.
Correct.
Because honestly, what else do they have? He's going to have to put this team on his back at times, again, as we've seen the first 9 games of the season. But Yeah, like you said, I mean, Ovechkin is the pure goal scoring sniper of
Yep.
everybody's lifetime, and Crosby is this all around playmaker, can do no wrong, one of the
Just
smartest hockey
generational
players
talent.
we've seen. Exactly, generational talent. But I don't think I ever used that term explosive with Sidney Crosby.
No, you're right.
And Connor McDavid is explosive.
Right, because you know what? Sidney Crosby has all the tools minus the explosive speed
Yeah, but he
that
still
McDavid
did it.
has.
He still those same things still happen. Like I remember, is it against Buffalo? Where there's a few videos. Sorry, Buffalo, where Crosby just lit them up. I mean, he plays them a lot. Just
What are you
like
apologizing to Buffalo for? I'm pretty sure that Crosby has the most career points per team against the Islanders.
he's up there. I did write an article about that on Hockey
Yeah.
Writers. And Crosby's definitely on that list. Yager, unsurprisingly,
Yeah, he was number
was
one.
the top, and Recchi was really high. He had played in Philly for a really long time. Gretzky was number 5. But yeah, I mean, there's players that just played against the Islanders quite a bit, and for a long time they were not good.
Yeah.
So players padded their stats against them. But I think my point is, I think the results were there. Like you can get down to nitty gritty of the who's faster and this and puck and whatever. But I'm saying they beat players very similarly. They went through entire teams. They carried teams on their back. The results, as far as points are concerned, and they have very similar setups. Like that's a good comparison with there was Gino and Crosby, and there's Draisaitl and McDavid. They
Right.
don't always play on the same line. They help each other on the power plays, whatever. And that's where I kind of think about them as good comparables for a change.
Yeah.
There's even like Ovechkin and Backstrom. They kind of have the yin to their yang, or whatever you want to call it. They have their co-pilot in all this, and that's why I see them as like they're really, really similar.
Yeah.
And it's amazing that we had that back to back. Forget that we had Ovechkin and Crosby in the same era for a really long time, killing it.
Yeah.
No, I don't think I'll ever forget the hat trick games where they back and forth in the playoffs.
Yeah.
They both had hat tricks, so phenomenal. But to have McDavid right after Crosby, or overlapping by and large, I don't know. I see them as having the same effect on their teams.
It's almost like you guys seen The Matrix?
Sure.
It's like when they slow down time, but like they're not slow. It's like they see everything happening around them in a slower pace, but they're in real time. So it's just like,
well, it's like Queen's Gambit for those that have seen the show. Like they're able to see the game differently.
Yeah.
And like strategically, I think that's kind of what it is, right? It's not
right.
What's the Gretzky quote? I wasn't going where the puck is. I was going where it was going to be. You have to be able to know the game, and if you're not a particularly fast player, it helps you. It elevates your game. If you're Sidney Crosby and Connor McDavid, it helps you enormously, because not only are you going to get there way before anyway, but you knew to do it to begin with.
Right.
So I thought about that as we go. So we can continue. We don't want to make
we nerded out on Connor McDavid enough. So let's get past that. Some news, New York Rangers news this week. Tony DeAngelo was just waived yesterday. Today he cleared waivers, or yesterday as you're listening to this. A lot of talk about why this happened. A lot of dispute as to what the real situation was. Joe, what do you got on this situation?
Yeah, this is kind of the unfortunate side of sports and hockey, which I really don't like covering or necessarily talking about. But as we know, Tony DeAngelo has been a controversial figure. When he was in juniors, he was suspended twice for using racist slurs. We know the guy has been a bigot. He has had problems with teammates. He has made some outlandish and explicit and lewd claims on social media. And he's been a problem, and he's made news off the ice more than he has on the ice. And it's sort of reached a boiling point for the Rangers over the last few months, as we know that Tony DeAngelo is a staunch Donald Trump supporter, and I'm not going into it. But
I'll do that, Joe.
Okay. You can go ahead. But he deactivated his Twitter account in solidarity with the former president, and He was saying some pretty crazy things about COVID-19 and how he was kind of downplaying the virus. And, he wasn't really making a ton of friends along the way as it was. And turns out on Saturday night in their overtime loss against the Penguins, as they were leaving the ice, D'Angelo said something to goaltender Alexander Georgiev, and I guess it was a kind of sly, sarcastic remark. And from what we know, Georgiev went at him. What I was told last night by a source, it was that D'Angelo was punched in the face. I could not get confirmation on if it was Georgiev or not. Larry Brooks of the New York Post said that there was no other teammate involved, which suggests that it was Georgiev who threw the punch. However, I've had a couple of sources over the last day or two tell me that it was Chris Kreider that got involved and might have thrown the punch. So it's a little juicy, obviously.
Yeah.
But again, I can't confirm anything about that. I would defer to Larry Brooks, though, in that case. Obviously, he's a lot closer with the Rangers. But, D'Angelo was punched, and, that was the straw that broke the camel's back, to say. And the Rangers let Tony know the next day that he was going to get waived. And a few hours ago, after he cleared waivers, Rangers general manager Jeff Gorton said that he will not be playing another game as a Ranger. So that's it. He's done.
Right.
Where he goes, we don't know. But this is a promising offensive-minded defenseman
For sure.
was a absolute liability, in the defensive zone in front of his goaltenders because he was, for example, just the latest example, he was on the ice for Crosby's winner in overtime, and he was on the ice for 3 of those goals given up on Saturday. So,
Right.
We saw Matthew Barzal burn him on opening night. That became a big thing on social media too.
It's a poster now.
Exactly. Yeah. So exactly. He posted us. Right. So, when he had 1 point in his first 6 games, obviously the bad was far outweighing the good as it was. And I'll let John touch on this more because I know I see the steam coming from his ears. This is a stand that, the Rangers should not have tolerated this kind of behavior from this guy for a long time. And it's just unfortunate that it took a drastic event like this, which, doesn't really have to do with all of his other issues that, ran him out of town in New York. So I'll defer now to the panel.
I think what bothers me the most about this is that it took. Do you remember in Dallas they let the coach go? I forget who the coach was. He had a substance use issue. I want to say it was alcohol. I'm trying not to.
I don't remember.
Anyway, they wound up letting the guy go, and they had to be, because this was right after the Calgary incident and a couple other things. They had to be specific, and maybe it happened in San Jose too. But they said it was they had to be specific with what they were saying. It was like this was not a hockey related thing, or this was a hockey related thing, and that made me think about this. Like, I can't believe it took something. This sounds like it boiled over way further than it should have. They should have nipped this in the butt way long ago. But it was, it had to take, like, his play was poor, and he got in a fight with a teammate before the Rangers, who said almost nothing last summer during Black Lives Matter. They were one of the last teams. I think they had 2 different releases that said pretty much nothing of, they didn't name George Floyd, but I'm pretty sure, and they definitely didn't say that he was murdered. A lot of other teams took that approach. The Islanders were iffy on that. They did a great job at first. And I'd also like to point out that I have not seen a whole lot on Black History Month from New York sports teams or NHL teams in general. I'm sure some have, but I have not seen a whole lot about it. So it's a whole different issue.
Will O'Ree, and that's the extent.
Yeah, Willie O'Ree, decades later, when they need a win. That's such PR nonsense. I don't like that. I don't like that at all. But it sucks that it took this kind of like his play is bad and incidents with teammates, seemingly hockey related. Like I guess you can make it. He got annoyed at Georgiev about something, and whatever the case is, it boiled over because they lost and this and that. To me, it errs on the side of more hockey related incident. But it was okay that he was saying things on Twitter about election fraud that were false, or about white supremacy, or whatever the case is, and kind of promoting this stuff, and the Rangers kind of letting that go over and over, like until he finally deleted his own account. It doesn't sit well with me. Like the Rangers as an organization, not as an Islander fan, but just as a wannabe reporter, writer guy, or as just a human, rather. It doesn't sit well with me. I don't like how they've handled all of this. And they have a young black hockey player who is really, really talented, who scored his first goal, I believe, last weekend, Keandre Miller. So I really think, this can't just be PR stuff. Like they're doing this now, it's performative. And they're not even calling out the bad thing. They're just saying, his play was bad, he had a bad attitude, instead of actually addressing the issue. I think even beyond that is that I saw an Yzerman quote about the kid because they had drafted him.
Right, they drafted him with Tampa Bay. Right,
so again, they knew about the issues. There was an interview with his dad that was disgusting. And I don't understand how. Again, this is the same. A similar issue happened just with the Coyotes last June or whenever the draft was. Right?
Yeah.
They knew this kid. The incidents were there, and they have to get pressure to then release him or revoke the rights or whatever the case is. I don't understand. The NHL is not showing receipts. They've had a bad relationship with the Hockey Diversity Alliance, who's asked, I think, reasonable things of them, and they've just decided to kind of balk at it. This is, seems to be their MO, considering, well, if it's not the WNHL, we don't want any part of it. Okay, that's not really promoting the game. You're kind of at odds with it. It's kind of, I'm going to take my ball and go home, and because I don't think your ball is good enough. Help them. Maybe the ball needs to be inflated. They need marketing. They need all this kind of stuff. Individual teams are doing more than the NHL is right now. The Colorado Avalanche are doing more than the NHL for women's hockey. But all this, and that's why I zoomed out a little bit, all this is indicative of the problems within the game. I think we talked about this with Chris Dose of Anti-Flag, but way back. Yeah. It feels like forever. The issues in the game and all that kind of stuff. And even within the NWHL, it's a little interesting because there are issues with that. And then with Barstool. And then a player comes out and says something, and then they're all attacking her. Hockey's a mess. And they really need to figure it out. And I think we've said this before. I think probably last August when the players postponed those games in the playoffs. James is getting tired of this, I can tell. Oh man, I lost my train of thought. It's
when they postponed the games in the bubble.
Yeah, I think it was the players' decision. The league was agreeing with the players to just absolve themselves of any responsibility of that. Well, we're going to support the players. That sounds like a police union. Yeah, it's our guy. It's fine. So there's all these different problems, and it just sounds like it's their MO. They're stepping away from this stuff. They're not providing the receipts of moving forward.
And we've talked about this, the systemic problems that the NHL has had when it's come to race and ensuring that this is a equal opportunity type of game. And again, forgive me if I'm wrong here, but I'm pretty sure it's Hockey Canada that runs this whole campaign that hockey is for everyone, or even if it was the NHL that did this, hockey is for everyone. Well, start living up to that billing. And they haven't. Again, of the big four sports, without a doubt, hockey is the most exclusive. Where large, we've said it, it's the smallest of the big four sports. It's incredibly difficult for a lot of people to get into and to start playing for, again, whatever reason it might be. resources, money, whatever it is. It's an expensive sport to start playing in. And then you have this where, we've seen reports of hazing and racism all throughout juniors and everything. This is a problem that runs super deep all the way down to the game's roots.
Yeah.
And what I was going to say earlier is this is the conversation we need to have. It is not the responsibility of Black reporters or Black players or anything like that to explain to people what the problems are. And that's why I want to make sure that we're talking about this stuff, because it is making sure that we're condemning D'Angelo. And because a majority of the fans they do look like us, right? And I've experienced some stuff too. When I was home on Long Island in August and I skated, there was anti-Semitism on the ice. In August, like as all this stuff was going on, and I just can't understand it. I don't like. What I can't understand is how fans and people around the game don't see it.
Well, here's a question, and maybe it's totally unrelated, and you guys could tell me, it's not the same, but maybe the NHL as an organization is just not good at growing the game in general, right? They don't even do good by themselves, meaning the NHL as a brand, right? Nobody knows outside of hockey fans who Connor McDavid really is. So they don't do a good enough job to really grow the game in any aspect of, well, let's make hockey a substantial sport.
They don't do the simple things right. How are they going to do this right? Which isn't an excuse.
No, it's not.
There are people out there that can help them.
You see plenty of things going on with youth sports and major league teams or professional teams reaching out and doing tons of things with all these youth sports to try and grow the game at a young age. You don't see it half as much with the NHL. So
like the Rangers have hockey in Harlem, I believe.
It's just, but
they bring in the Central Park or Bryant Park or something.
There's so many pockets that they're missing that they're not doing enough to grow the game as a whole. And don't get me wrong, not growing the diversity of the game is one of the biggest issues. They're striking out on all accounts in growing the game in general.
It's a lazy excuse for people that don't want to put the work in, because people who are at the very top, and this is, you can call this speculation, but it's just simply me using my 2 eyes and my 2 ears and trying to use a little bit of common sense. They don't care. They just,
that's what I'm afraid of. Because I think with a guy like D'Angelo, just like they have a substance use program, and I want to make sure I'm not misspeaking here. I'm not saying substance abuse, I'm saying substance use. There's a whole thing on that. Please go do your homework. Anyway, again, we can't explain everything, but just like Bobby Ryan had to step away from the game and do his thing. He came back. He's on fire this season with Detroit. It's amazing, that story. That's great. Robin Leonard, a lot of these players they're coming back, and the league supports them. The NHL's PA supports them. They should do the same thing. If there are issues within a team, and we don't have to know about what's going on, but if D'Angelo's, saying all this stuff in the last year or so, should be taken away from the team and be put on a diversity and inclusion retreat or whatever. Go take some time away from the game. Go learn this. This is important for you as a person. Silly sport is not a thing. Doesn't matter. Go as a human being. Because you got to imagine, if people are doing this, he's doing it on Twitter. He's probably doing this with teammates. He's probably making people uncomfortable. He's doing this in his regular life. Yeah, you have to pay attention to that. So that would be something the league should really institute, that they're going to help rehabilitate players mentally with this kind of stuff, or intellectually, or whatever the case is. Look, if they strike out after that, that's it.
Yeah,
the Rangers referenced freedom of speech, and I think it's really important to remember that freedom of speech protects you from the government and not from private entities. So that excuse was just empty. Like it just doesn't mean anything. And again, it's the Rangers as an organization trying to pass the buck, trying to say that there's something in between them and the problem and why they can't actually solve it. And I don't know. I just think it's bullshit. I gotta say.
Yeah, they had D'Angelo and Brendan Lemieux. If you don't remember, they had a podcast called Watch Your Tone, and it was about I remember the announcement. It was going to be it's going to be about what the people need to hear, and you might not like it. That kind of went away, but they never really addressed like some of the things that might have went on that podcast and some of the views that they and listen, I get it, free country, freedom of speech and everything, but if you're blatantly doing harm to who you're representing, then you have to put an end, and make an example of, and hold somebody accountable for it.
Yeah, and I think this is one of those things, and I think what's the hardest thing, and we can put a cork in this right after. I think what's upsetting is that they did it for like, they didn't start with this young man said some things, and that's not who we are as an organization. They just that's his problem. Whoa, that's an enormous issue for me. Like looking at the Rangers as an organization, to be like, yeah, he had issues with essentially he had issues with teammates. His play wasn't good, and whatever. He was getting a slap on the wrist, and that's it. And they may terminate his contract. They may try to, he may go to Europe. He may something. I don't know. I have no idea. I think it's up in the air right now. But that's what's disappointing to me is they're not saying this young man doesn't represent our organization's values. They just said, nah, he's not very good anymore, and he's kind of a jerk. Whoa.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what this is. I'll tell you exactly what it is. It is a team attempting to protect its brand. And
its asset, because they want to trade him.
Yeah,
which is sick.
Right. And not isolate themselves from any portion of their fan base. So they took the middle ground. They wouldn't condemn him because, again, this is the inconvenient truth. There are a lot of hockey fans and probably a lot of Rangers fans that align with Tony DeAngelo's thinking and with some of his actions. Like we saw that interview with his father. There are a lot of kids from New Jersey and Long Island that we talked about. You sit in the stands at a hockey game. Me, growing up, going to Madison Square Garden, going to Nassau Coliseum, going to hockey games, hearing some of the things that the fans said to these players or the coaches or each other.
I mean, it was what was being said in locker rooms, too. Yeah. Still being said in locker rooms.
Exactly. So they don't condemn him for that. And then at the same time, they just kind of push him away, like, well, he's not our problem. But they don't actually condemn him.
Yeah, and that's, like I said, that's ultimately the issue that I have. Like,
exactly
the value statement of the organization. How do you, as the Rangers, then go to any nonprofit or any whatever and say, we want to partner with you because you align with our mission, vision, and values, and blah blah blah. What exactly are those at this point?
Anything they do this month, in this month of February,
which will be a grand total of nothing.
Exactly. But if they do, in the back of my mind, it will always be this.
Yeah.
And again, it's a shame.
Totally.
It's a shame because, again, we should be talking about a guy like Keandre Miller, who's an absolute stud, who just scored his first NHL goal, like you said before, and is going to be a star in this league.
Oh, and thank you for reminding me. Don't let any reporter or whatever, or the Rangers or anything, let you believe or tell you how Keandre Miller feels about DeAngelo being on the team.
Yes.
Until he says something, which the Rangers will for sure not let happen, at least not right now. Don't let anyone but him tell you how that situation made him feel.
Correct.
They do not have that right. And if he decides he doesn't want to say something, that's fine. But only he makes that decision. That needs to be made perfectly clear. And it's, as all this was kind of evolving on Twitter a couple hours ago, as we're recording this a couple hours ago, people were trying to not mince words, but they were trying to describe the situation for the kid, for Miller. And I was like, it's not an original thought. Everyone was saying, like, how can you be speaking for this kid right now.
Right, he hasn't said anything.
No,
Not
the
a
Rangers are
word.
not going to let him say anything.
Yeah.
What a crappy place to put a young rising star.
Yeah, his first NHL goal has been totally overshadowed by this. I do feel horrible for him, but hopefully he'll make up for it with a outstanding career because, like John said, he is a rising star. He's going to be special in this league. But let's talk about some other issues that are arising.
Yeah, James, take control of the show and moving along.
There are some other issues arising.
Oh my God! All of our listeners are gone.
Michael Russo, who covers the Minnesota Wild for The Athletic, said that Marco Rossi's upper body issue is actually complications from having COVID-19 since back in November. So this is a scary situation, especially since he's such a young player. This leads us to actually, the Islanders, because who may have some games postponed in the near future, including tonight's game, not due to COVID issues. There is a snowstorm happening as we speak. It already limited Buffalo's travel, but they have a possibility of I don't know if is Buffalo going to make it tonight. I don't know.
Aside from getting there, but there may be issues with COVID protocol with the team.
Right,
because
that
they just played the Devils, who had, I think it's up to 10 players.
Yeah.
As of when I wrote this earlier tonight, it was 10 players on that list. So it could go up by tomorrow by 5:00 for the Devils. Their games are postponed through the 6th, I believe. So this weekend.
Yeah, through Saturday. I think that the Sabres actually are in the clear. I think they had said everybody practiced today after they made the announcement that they weren't coming to New York until tomorrow morning or this morning. But they have to make it to Long Island from Buffalo, but I think they're going to leave at 6 a.m. But yeah, this COVID issue is arising. There is a lot of postponed games. The Stars just came off of a long break, or they didn't even start. The Hurricanes just came off of postponement. The Florida Panthers just came off postponement. So a lot of postponed games going on. Just to cover why a player might go on the list, an initial positive test, which remains unconfirmed until confirmatory testing is completed pursuant to the positive test protocol. Mandated isolation for symptomatic individuals pursuant to the positive test protocol, required quarantine as a high-risk close contact in accordance with the positive test protocol, isolation based on a confirmed positive test result, and quarantine for travel or other reasons as outlined in the COVID-19 protocol, such as, what we're seeing with Patrick Laine and Pierre-Luc Dubois. They haven't made their NHL debuts with their new teams just yet, just because they traveled from Canada to United States or vice versa.
Yeah, a good example of why those nuances are important. It was like Josh Bailey. He was on for a day or not even 24 hours.
You miss a game,
Yeah, so and that was because his son's teacher tested positive, and there was a possibility that they had come in contact with something, but he was cleared. He was good to go. But there's just so many ways in which this could be. This stops play, and there's so many ways in which you can come into contact with it. It's crazy, but I think Sarah Siv, she covers the Hurricanes with The Athletic.
She's so funny.
She's funny because she quote tweeted something about a report, and she said in a couple of years we're going to look back on this season and be like, what the heck were we doing? I'm like yeah, I guess that's probably right.
About that sometimes. I know it's so good to be like, it feels good to. I like making my meals, especially on the weekends. I love making my meals. It's a dead of winter. You can't really go anywhere. You sit down, you watch Hockey's the game, and it's like a whole my whole day's planned around. Like I got to start making dinner at 5:30 because the game's on at 7.
Yeah.
It's the whole thing, and but it's crazy, and I feel bad for these guys because it's a lot like all of us. At least they get to go play hockey. Plus they get paid for it, but it's a struggle. Like the road trips aren't the same.
No.
I don't know, Joe, do they have roommates, or it's like one roommate, or it's just everybody's in their own room? Do you know anything about that?
That I'm not sure. I assume though that it's kind of, you have roommates. At least that's what I anticipate. Because again, if you're playing in the bubble and you're, working out together and sitting on the bench together and you're sweating and breathing heavy and whatever, then I don't see much of an issue, I think, when it comes to roommates. But I'm
thinking of the Capitals situation.
Right. I'm pretty sure that they were
it was more than just the two people that belong in a room.
Right.
If it's roommates or whatever.
Correct.
Yeah, I don't exactly get it. If it's kind of like the OHL situation where it's like hitting, and then they were talking about the bench, and I don't know. Sounds like maybe we shouldn't be doing this, but with rapid tests and different things like that, I think the plan all along, and we said this in the beginning of the season, was to just figure it out as you go. They're gonna postpone. They built in this extra week or 10 days or so. I think you can only bank on every team going through it one time.
Right.
More than that, I think there winds up being an issue. That's for future us to discuss on a podcast at a later date. But you wonder what happens if something happens in Dallas a second time.
Yeah.
And then you're getting into how teams get in the playoffs, just like last year. And oh God,
let's hope it doesn't come to that, right?
Yeah, fingers crossed.
Yeah. Moving on to On the Island, let's talk about last week's games. We're going to get into some Islanders talk here. We play New Jersey, we play Washington, we play Philadelphia. What's going on? We went 0-3-2 on a 5-game road trip. They're not the Islanders that we saw in the bubble. I mean, is that a correct assessment?
Yes. The short answer is absolutely yes, right?
Yes.
So I was thinking about this. I was trying to write a piece for the hockey writers and put something together. I think there's a couple things here, and I won't take all of them, but I think this is a team that is more than the sum of their parts, right? They produce. They're not in the bubble. They weren't like, wow, Brassard's so good. No, he plays well with these other guys.
Yeah.
And the power, right? It was chemistry. It wasn't isolated, good players in a vacuum. And I wonder if it was just the right players.
Could be.
And I love a Wallstrom and Bellows getting in the lineup. I like Zarnak a lot. I like Timashov a lot. But that doesn't necessarily mean it's the right group together in its current configuration.
So what you're telling me is that this group is so fragile that the subtraction of Derek Brassard and Johnny Boychuk completely changed everything about this team.
When you're
and Devin Taves.
When you're relying on specific chemistry and making things work, if something very small in your car doesn't, your starter is a very small, rather cheap part of your car. It doesn't work. That's it. The whole car is garbage. Now, I'm not saying that's what's going on with the Islanders, but it seemed like Trotz could do no wrong in the playoffs. I believe those were your words, Jay. He was switching guys in and out. He was,
True.
It was chess. It was kind of massaging this lineup and taking guys out and putting guys in and moving them, blah, blah, blah. And even if you regretted it with Bailey a little bit, it seemed like it was the right guy. Whether that was a timing thing and the guy peaked at the right time or any number of caveats, but the guy stepped in and they played well.
Right.
Komarov is not, just thinking at the low level guys that they were moving around. There's no Handsome Tom, no Kuhnackel. There's no Brassard. Komarov just needs to, I don't know where it needs to go. Not in the lineup.
Robidas Island.
So there's a number of these players. There's no Boychuk. I wonder what that's like in the locker room. I wonder during some of the adversity, getting a guy that's just gonna not just throw a hit, but just be tough. He's just going out there. He's playing the same every shift.
I mean, but is Boychuk not in the locker room? I get it. He's not on the bench. He's not on the ice. It's a different dynamic. But is he not in the locker room?
I don't know. Maybe it's there's the locker room. They're in there for 17 minutes,
right,
in between periods, and there's on the bench. There's I don't know. Like I wonder. I don't want to say fragile because I feel like that's super harsh. I understand it though, and I can't think of another word. But it's kind of it doesn't take much for I'm trying to think of something like the hub of a car or a bicycle, right? The wheel hub. A little bit of sand gets in there, and it doesn't. It's just not quite the same. There's something a little off about it forever.
Well, Joe, let me ask you something. The kids get a shot, right? Bellows gets in, Wahlstrom gets in. Bellows, gotta say, I've been impressed, and then I've been more impressed. Wahlstrom gets in, and I'm not as impressed as Bellows, but I'm like, you know what? This is good. I like what I'm seeing. It's hungry hockey. They're out there. They're making things happen. What is it about this lineup that they can't stay in the lineup, right? We're seeing Komarov get second line minutes the day after he takes a brutal penalty and basically costs the Islanders that game. We see, they get benched for guys like Zarnak and Timashov. Don't get me wrong, Zarnak was great. Timashov was But why did they come out a game after they played so well? Bellows gets on the power play. Sometimes he gets a second line role. I would like to see a promotion rather than a demotion for these kids. In my opinion, the league's getting younger and we're starting to see the fourth line maybe fall apart a little bit. What's going on with this lineup and why are Bellows and Wahlstrom not solidified? Because in my opinion, they've proven that they can stick.
So right now, I don't want to use the term desperation, but it's sort of this helter-skelter start to the season where, there were enough questions surrounding the Islanders lineup heading into the season where we didn't know where, that depth of scoring was going to come from that they so desperately needed last year that they were able to, overcome and make that run to the Eastern Conference Final.
Yeah.
But it's a bevy of factors here. The Islanders aren't sneaking up on anybody anymore.
No.
That's number one. Number two is this style of play, this culture that has been instituted by Barry Trotz and Lou Lamoriello has undoubtedly turned this organization around, 100%. But when you look at the Islanders roster at the end of the day, what do you see? It's not the most impressive group on paper. It's not the most skilled group on paper. And to play this high level, always on, super intricate, attention to detail kind of hockey, it's hard to keep that up, for a year. It's hard to keep that up for 2 years. Now we're in year 3. Everybody knows what's coming at you. In the postseason, in the bubble, the Flyers kind of showed the league what it took to put a chink in that armor. The Lightning showed the rest of the league how to break it apart. And again, it's the same cast of characters for the most part that's returning. And we talked about this, when they first were starting to surprise everybody in year 1 of the Trotz reign. Is this sustainable hockey? Well, it was sustainable for a year. Okay, it was sustainable for 2 years. But like you said, a couple of those parts got swapped out, and all of a sudden it's hard to stay at this level. And again, if you're listening on the podcast, my hand is over my head here.
We do YouTube now, Joe.
Yeah, I know. I'm trying to cover both of our mediums here. But
he's a visual comic, ladies and gentlemen, or visual reporter.
I'm Italian. I talk with my hands. It gets weird.
He did say bibbidi bobbidi before the show, so
that's true. He did.
He can keep his vowel at the end of his name, at least for now.
Part of the group.
He's got a pizza man mustache. It's fantastic.
I do. It's quarantine. I'm alone in the house. My wife can put up with it for a little bit, so it's like my one time a year I'm allowed to have it. But no, as I was saying, it's hard to sustain this level of intricacy and this high attention to detail all the time. And all in that same time, Barry Trotz is, as he's told us and as he's alluded to us the last couple of days, especially after the loss on Monday night to the Flyers.
Right.
He's still trying to figure it out. He's still trying to figure this lineup out. And these demotions of Bellows and Wahlstrom aren't necessarily warranted. But at the end of the day, the results weren't coming up on the board. So it was kind of one of those, well, we got to shuffle it up almost for the sake of shuffling it up to see if we can get the result. But he said again, after the loss to Philly, that he's close to finding that right lineup. So in that aspect, I think that we will see Bellows and Wahlstrom making it back to the lineup, just because, again, at the end of the day, this is a team that can't score goals. And while Bellows has played that right way, Wahlstrom has only played 2 games, and he needs to get there. And it's really, I wanted to note this because we saw Joel Farabee put up a hat trick against the Islanders.
Yeah,
and
we did.
2 of those goals came on absolute lasers of wrist shots. Oliver Wahlstrom has that shot.
Yes,
Oliver
he does.
Wahlstrom needs to be put in that kind of situation to facilitate that kind of skill set.
Right.
Again, if Barry can pull the right strings, he can get him there.
Well, let's just look at the way Oliver Wahlstrom scored his first NHL goal, right? It was fluky, but that's the thing. His mindset is get pucks to the net. Bellows is the same way. They both just shoot. They're shoot-first mentalities. They're probably the only 2 guys on the team, with the exception of maybe Jordan Eberle, who do that. It's crazy to me. And hit the net. It's crazy, and the crazy thing is too. Somehow Wahlstrom hit the net on that crazy bounce, but he did. He hit the net. Look, it's crazy to me because we see these crazy lineup combinations, right? We got Peugeot up and down the lineup, essentially rolling with 2.5 lines now.
Well, because he's playing part of the 4th line.
Exactly.
He's up on the 2nd line. Even with without Beauvillier, he's still playing for the entire bottom 6.
Right. So now, and I want to make a connection here. 2 nights ago, in the first game against the Flyers, we see Alain Vigneault bench Travis Konechny. Doesn't like his game. Holding his players accountable.
I think he was a point per game still.
He is a point per game still. He's the leading scorer.
Like he got sat. Yeah, he was the leading scorer.
The leading scorer
got benched
for the Flyers. Where is the and don't get me wrong, as you're listening to this, you don't trust Barry? Listen, I'm a Barry Trotz guy. I'll run through a wall for him. Where's the accountability? Nelson is a ghost. Josh Bailey, before the last night's game or 2 nights ago, he's been on a milk carton. Beauvillier being out has hurt. He didn't do much before he got hurt. But instead of benching Wahlstrom and Bellows, why not elevate their minutes and hold the veterans accountable? The veterans who were the guys who got you there last year and not doing it this year, there's no accountability here. It's like I'm going to trust my Leo Komarov to play on the 2nd line because he has 10 seasons of the NHL under his belt. Whereas you might get more results and better results from a hungry kid who wants to prove that he belongs.
Or at least give him the confidence to grow into it. That's my issue. I don't understand why they can't even do that.
And that was my next point, right? How do you bench a kid who's been playing his heart out? He's been playing his heart and soul out on the ice. And then completely take his confidence away the next game by not having him out there.
I mean, I think it's interesting that they didn't at least leave Bellows in and add Zarnak. If you weren't going to take Komarov out, I didn't see. One game of Timashov does not mean the guy is get rid of him, right?
No, not at all.
At the same time, you had guys in the lineup that were playing really well in Bellows and Wahlstrom. So at least leave one of them in there. Zarnak was great. I gotta say, if he's the replacement for Komarov, or if the 4th liner gets hurt, Clutterbuck or whatever, or maybe he's the answer for Clutterbuck. I really believe that Clutterbuck will not be back next season. I think he's on LTIR. He's just there's something wrong.
You're speaking it into existence.
We're
trying.
I have to. And I like him as a player. It's just not something's up. The numbness in his hand or whatever's going on. That whole 4th line to me is not the same. Now, Cizikas had a serious injury, very similar, if not the same, as Oposo years ago. And Oposo was never really the same after that retina detachment and injury. I believe it was this very similar injury that Oposo had. Has not been himself, even while he was still on the Islanders.
Right.
So I saw that during the playoffs with Cizikas last year. I think I said in the podcast there was something going on. Martin, I don't know if it's the weight of the contract. I don't know what's going on. The whole line isn't cohesive anymore, the 4th line. And so that's a problem because then they can't really be trusted. And then that's why Pajot's going down and playing in Martin's spot at times. So I wonder if when Beauvillier's back and the top 6 are together, I wonder if it's Zarnak, Pajot, and Bellows. And then depending on who they're playing, maybe Wahlstrom gets a game, maybe Zarnak plays a majority of them. I don't know. I really hope Komarov is just not a consistent answer. And then Staple, I had retweeted the quote that Staple had in his article, which was kind of profound, but Barry Trotz essentially, paraphrasing what Staple had said, it's that Trotz thinks Komarov is the answer to the problem rather than the problem itself. And that's it. If he thinks he's a solution,
right,
instead of the problem, well, guess what? He's in the lineup. And that's it. It's just gonna, it's gonna continue like that.
It's going with what and it's that familiarity that has carried him, throughout this Islander tenure. And I will say this is just me throwing it out there. I have no knowledge. I don't know anything. I'm not suggesting anything. I'm just putting it out into existence.
We've read your articles. We know you don't know anything. Whether it's
just plain just don't mind me. We've talked about almost extensively how Anders Lee might actually best be suited for a third line role.
Oh yeah.
If you want to put Oliver Wahlstrom in the lineup, put him on the first line. Put that shot on the first line. See what he can do with a playmaker like Matthew Barzal.
I love it.
Just why not? For a team that is starving for offense, all of a sudden, again, you don't. And a lot of people are going to say, and it's one of the first things that came to my mind when I was kind of working throughout this, and it takes a long time for these gears to get going, but at some point, they say, well, who's going to get in front of the net? Anders Lee is that big body that gets in front of the net. He's not getting to the net nearly enough.
And he's not capitalizing when he is.
He's not capitalizing. You're absolutely right, John. The entire Islanders offense, there's an aversion to going to the front of the net.
Yeah.
And when you have a guy like Mike Babcock on the national NBC Sports telecast during the intermission saying this.
A different problem we're not diving into.
We're not touching that one. No way. But if he can see it, I mean, we all can see it. So, again, for a team that is starving for that infusion of scoring talent and that threat, put that kind of shot next to Matthew Barzal.
100%.
I think long term, that's got to be. I think he's going to turn for Anders Lee, and I'm not comparing him to the player. I'm just his role on the team. I think eventually he will be like a Joe Thornton, right? Where he was on the third line in San Jose, I believe. He was in the middle six at least. He wasn't on the top line.
Right.
And I think as the captain of the team, he's he knows his role. It doesn't mean he's any less of anything and means less to the team, but he would best fit with Lee, Peugeot, Bellows. I like that.
That's a great
idea.
Yeah. That is a proven, trusted third line to bolster your bottom six. You're bringing more scoring skill to your top line for everybody who's saying the Islanders needed that sniper.
Sure. Yeah.
And at the end of the day, that sniper was going to replace Anders Lee in the first place. Well, maybe there's an in-house promotion there that can actually do that. You don't have to worry about, for now, this cat mess that was created by Lou Lamoriello.
Right. And that would 100% work, right? You put Wahlstrom on the first line. Now you have Barzal, you have Jordan Eberle, and you have Wahlstrom on the first line. Barzal's going to do his thing. He's going to skate around the world, get every defender's head in a loop, and then who's going to be open? All the defenders are going to be drawn to Matt Barzal. Oh, let's give it to Oliver Wahlstrom, who, by the way, his shot was NHL ready the day he was drafted. Now, think about the third line with Lee, Peugeot, and Bellows, right? You get Lee to the front of the net. He's taking now, 6 less minutes a night? But his body's not being banged up as much, so he'll be more willing to get a little dirtier in front of the net and bang a rebound home from probably who's the guy that's going to shoot it? Bellows, because he's the shot-first mentality. Who's going to feed him that puck? Peugeot, because he gets down and dirty, he gets into the corners, he wins the puck battles, and he's going to get the puck back. So it's just there are so many line combinations that should be happening that, listen, Barry Trotz, in my mind, is the best coach in the NHL. I don't know why he's not seeing the fact that these line combinations can happen.
And I feel like in a season like the one that we have, where if you were going to, it's so easy, the excuse of the pandemic would be really, really easy to just throw out there.
Sure.
Why not? This is the season to try it. The failure of it all, is not a big deal.
Right.
So you may as well just do it.
Now, all this leads me to my next question, right? Let's just say Barry Trotz decided, I'm listening to the Nassman Hockey Podcast tomorrow, and here's this, and he goes, hey, not a bad idea, Joe. I'm going to try it out. tries it out, week goes by, no dice. Tries out another line combination, another week goes by, no dice. At what point does something major need to happen to this roster?
The offseason.
You think that nothing at all this season, we're riding it out until the very end?
I mean, it's this thing is a sprint. So you know what? By the time the trade deadline comes, if the Islanders are playing like this, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what happens, and you take this year on the chin, and then you try and get to the off season, and either I'm not going to say blow it up, but you try and make these drastic moves with a full off season, and try to get those improvements that you so desperately needed in August and September. So
it's a real dollars and cents thing for them, honestly. Yep. Because again, if you're, I want Clutterbuck to be himself. I really do. But if he's not going to be, then they need to figure that out, and that's something off the books. Cizikas may get a new deal and come back a little bit cheaper. There's going to be a player lost in the expansion draft. There's going to be players moving around. I don't know if it's worth, if it's going to be the same kind of game as during the last expansion where it was giving up assets for this and don't take this guy and whatever. The Islanders really can't make a move at the deadline because they need to make sure they're not going to lose an additional player during the expansion draft. So you kind of need to hold on to those assets. They got an extra one, or maybe they got one back, or maybe they have an extra one from the Avalanche, but a second round pick, I don't know how much that's worth in the expansion draft. A team like Seattle that's kind of got everyone by the short and curly. So I don't know what that looks like for them. Like, I don't know if they have assets ultimately, knowing that both of those things are going to happen back to back.
Right.
I don't know if they have assets. And they both, again, Pajot was completely off the radar, and then they signed the guy immediately. Like, that wasn't somebody that it was around in media circles. Like, the Islanders going after a guy like Pajot. Right. That wasn't somebody we were thinking about. So I maintain that there are players out there that we're not thinking about that are going to be a good fit for this team, because again, that chemistry is so important. And you saw him come in and just light it up in the ping pong tournament and kind of like ham it up with everybody. I think it's really important. So I'm thinking about, I don't know what that player looks like, but that's kind of what I'm hoping for if there's even a move to be made.
I think you're right. Only thing I'm going to say about that is if there is like you said, a move to be made, I think we're past the point of he needs to be the right fit. Yes, he does need to be the right fit, but he can't just be another middle six, possible top six guy, right? That's what we got in Pajot. He's a middle six. He could be a top six. We need a talent. We need a bona fide goal scorer. And that's where this becomes tricky.
That's an off-season thing then. That's just
right, because if Patrick Laine was already traded, that is not happening.
You needed Patrick Laine, you needed Taylor Hall, you needed Mike Hoffman.
Yeah.
Something really wacky has to happen for a talent like that.
Right.
This year.
And I think of, and this is probably whack. I wrote about this, in the offseason. I think about a team like Detroit and a guy like Anthony Mantha, who's already turning 26. How close are the Detroit Red Wings to actually contending? Is Anthony Mantha's future going to really be in Detroit? I don't know, but he is a pure goal scorer. So, if they, or when they have another failed season, do the Islanders maybe reach out and be like, hey, what's the price on Mantha? I know he just, signed an extension. I'm just spitballing here, but that's the kind of player that you're looking to acquire. You're looking to acquire a guy who's going to just shoot the puck. And if you're not going to do that, then refer back to what we said about 5 minutes ago. Put Walsham on the first line and get him to get pucks to the net.
Because they have guys. There are very few options they have within the organization. I think I said this after the game the other night. This is it. There's no reinforcements coming.
That's what I'm saying.
This is the team. So they may as well mix it up a little bit. And Trotz likes to roll the lines. Make it the most equitable for that.
Make it the most rollable. I mean, the thing is,
You're running Pajot into the ground.
You are running Pajot into the ground, and we discussed last week too that Trotz admitted before the season started that he regretted moving Bailey around the lineup as much as he did last year. It did him a disservice. It's not just a Bailey thing. That's a player thing. If you move players around as much as you are, they're not going to build the chemistry. You think having Bellows and Wallstrom in and out of the lineup is doing them any good? No, it's only good for them when they're in the lineup and they're building the chemistry. Stick them on a line and let them get there. There was no preseason for them to, even be able to build chemistry in preseason games. There was no there was a short training camp, so it just took a lot for them to really get the ball rolling. And it's still trying. They're still trying to do it. So listen, at the end of the last game, Trotz had said, I liked where the game was headed. They still lost, so I didn't love it, but again, maybe they're right there, but we'll see. Time will tell. One thing I did want to say, though, that was a positive in my mind, I had a lot of people in my comments, on Twitter and everything saying, oh, he gave up a so-and-so rebound. He gave up this, he gave up that. Enough. Ilya Sorokin, his play so far, first game aside, I think he's been fantastic. I think he's been great. That he made two highlight reel saves the other night.
The athleticism came through.
It was when I saw those saves, I was beside myself. I was like, that was impressive. I don't know if Varlamov's making that save.
Oh.
I don't see that kind of athleticism on Varlamov.
You don't, and that was the one of the biggest things that was teased about Sorokin when he was coming to North America was that quickness, that lateral movement from post to post.
Yeah.
And we're seeing it. And again, I think there has been some unfair expectations placed on Sorokin's shoulders just because of the debut that we saw from Igor Shesterkin last year, where he came out like gangbusters for the Rangers, and he won whatever it was, 9 or 10 or 11 of his first handful of games, and he was unbeatable. Granted, he came over to North America. He had some time to find his bearings against
play in the AHL. Play in Hartford.
Exactly. Sorokin wasn't given that opportunity.
Right.
It was, you get to train with the team in the bubble, you get a super quick training camp, and then you're thrust into it. 100%. He's, I would say 95% close to being as billed as he was. The one thing that I have been seeing, though, there has been, and again, it's going to come just with experience, tracking that high shot at the NHL level.
Yes.
And we saw 3 posts hit on him last night.
Yes.
One was
he barely moved,
which was tough. Exactly. It's just it's staying up, and it's been the trend forever now with goalies and these new age goalies where you're down into the butterfly. You're down. You're on your pads. There's a willingness to do that almost immediately, at least from what I'm seeing. And that gives you the top of the net. And as you see, opposing teams are just firing. They get in the zone. They're not even trying to drive to the net. They're trying to rip them up high. And he's having some problems with that. But again, that will work itself out. And you look at the goaltending coaches that the Islanders had, that brass, it's going to be fine. It's things take time.
Right.
The thing that worries me a little bit is that he almost relies on that athleticism a little too much, which is it's not unnecessary movement, but he's making himself have to do it a little bit. It's kind of like, looking at those highlight reel saves from whoever. Does that mean they were out of position, or are they really that good? And that's a tough kind of balancing act there. So I wonder if they're working with him on that. Sometimes you gotta sell out a little bit to make those saves.
Well, I also wonder if, the Islanders defense that's not as good as it was last season is almost kind of forcing him to sometimes be out of position, just because, that save that he made on Voracek in the first period, he was wide open. Nobody was on him, and he was left wide open, kind of at the bottom of the circle. So
happened
With
a few times.
Right.
It's been happening. Missed assignments,
Yeah.
getting crossed up, and very
that-
simple things.
Yeah, and that pass came from the point. So he went from the middle of the crease, the top of the crease in the middle, to the left post, and he did it with some excellent athleticism.
Exactly, and it's that athleticism, but what's just as important was the composure.
Yeah.
Up top, his torso, that was rock solid. He went boom, he hit that left post, and he was a statue. That glove was up, he wasn't moving. And it's you kind of want all those growing up, as a goalie, you want to have the flair like Dominic Hasek, but sometimes
Right.
you need the resolution of Ed Belfour, where
Right.
it's just you kind of got to take the best of both worlds, and that's what we're seeing. That miraculous save is there. That highlight,
Correct.
show-stopping save is there, but the fundamentals are in place. And again, that foundation is there. And Barry Trotz loves that word foundation. It's there.
Yeah.
It's just kind of acclimating to it. But yeah, it's that question of flailing around the net position, that is a concern, John. You're absolutely right. That's been
He's being left out to dry a little bit.
Sure.
But I think it's watching him and making those saves, like I don't think I've seen Varlamov have to do that.
Right. No, because his positioning is so good. Varlamov's positioning is so excellent. And that's years of experience in the NHL. He's been through, he's paid his dues and he's been through it, and Sorokin will get there. Sorokin could stand to stay up in his crease a little bit, further. I said that last week. He's getting better. He's a little further up now, but he could still stand to, Varlamov's very aggressive. He's not just at the top of the crease. He's above the crease. So
he understands the angles way better of the rink.
Exactly. So Sorokin just needs to get there.
Yeah, looking at Sorokin, the shots that seem to be giving him the most trouble are from the dots and out.
Right. So
he just seems to be uncomfortable with that. He's not only just too deep in his net, but his whole angle's off. He's not square to the puck, and it's allowing. There's so much more available to him,
right,
to the shooter, and he's really super struggling with that. So I hope he figures it out.
I have an opinion on this, and I'm not going to say it just because I feel like I shouldn't personally. But I almost kind of noticed that in the bubble, especially in the Eastern Conference Final, the Islanders as a team played better in front of Varlamov than they did in front of Greiss.
Okay.
Do you think that might be the case? And I'm asking you guys, do you think that might be the case this year? Do you think that the Islanders are, whatever it is, playing more for Varlamov instead of Sorokin? Do you think it's just
we kind of alluded to this on the bonus episode on our Patreon, didn't we?
We did. And I'm still not sure, because the thing here is I almost want to say yes, but then they give up stinkers like they did the other night when he was in net anyway. So it's like, is it the fact that they're not playing well for Sorokin, or they're just not playing well? And that's where
I honestly don't. Yeah, I don't know either. Right now they lost both games pretty much the same way.
Exactly. So
I don't know what it is. Look, I mean, I think if you're playing in front of, the mindset might be a little bit different. They may be thinking about things a little bit more. But it's funny. They're not playing defense in front of their goaltenders in general. And I think with Sorokin's growing pains, it's just exacerbated a little bit. Those things just look worse in front of Sorokin.
Which also makes me want to say now that it's not, they don't play well in front of Sorokin. It's just that they're not playing well.
Yeah. And Varlamov's going to bail them out a few extra times.
Yeah. Which
his
has.
His goals above replacement is really good.
Yeah.
Sorokin's got to get there. I think he's playing a little inconsistently too. That doesn't help. Not even dressing for some games. Jesus, what a debacle that was. Not only did the team let Varlamov out to dry, but then you left him in there. You had to leave him in there. You couldn't push Schneider in. My goodness.
Just shows you how much they don't want to play Schneider.
Yeah, that's a whole mood too. Like you sit on the bench and you didn't even move. Everything was there. The trainers didn't even get the helmet. I saw it on the fold-out table in the hallway. Nothing moved.
Yeah.
It was all there. So I don't know if they're playing different. I think it's just they're playing bad, and Varlamov bails them out a couple extra more times than Sorokin can right now as he gets his bearings, and they may be making more mistakes in front of them. I don't know if that means that they're playing worse in front of him because it's him, or they're just playing worse in front of him, and that happens to be the coincidence.
Right.
That they're leaving guys wide open or this or that, and I don't know.
Yeah.
You Joe, you alluded to much earlier in the show that the team came out like gangbusters in the playoffs, and they kind of came together as a team, and they rallied, and they made it all the way to the Eastern Conference. And I think Barry Trotz the other day, and I'm paraphrasing, and I hope it was him that said this, but there's one thing to winning 16 games and having that light at the end of the tunnel versus going through the grind of a season. They went through that first season, chip on their shoulder. The energy around the team is very different. Barry Trotz's first season.
Yeah.
Last season, we saw the gas kind of run out. We saw them go through the first 20 games, even the first 25, 30 games, if you really wanted to stretch it out, although it started to fade closer to Christmas that in 2019, the fall, winter of 2019. But that first 30 games, you can sustain that. I think that's kind of what you were trying to allude to earlier, just keeping the gas up, the pedal on, the foot on the gas. Sayings and things, English words and good.
They're hard.
I know, but so I think that might just be what it is. It takes a little bit for them to get going, if they can even get going. Consistency. I think I've said that every single show so far this season.
Probably, yeah.
Consistency, and before the season started, that was going to be what hurt this team the most. Can they play consistently? And in zero part of their game have they done that, and that's a kind of a huge problem. You need to. It's not about players turning it on. That's another issue, but not even just being able to get the fourth line in a game or in a period to just be themselves for an entire period. I have not seen that yet.
Yeah, I think what is one of the more concerning things is how the talk leading up to the season was how this team has a chip on their shoulder, how there's something to prove, how they're ready to take that next step because we were so close to the mountaintop. And we're going to make sure that we take all the necessary precautions needed to get to that next peak. And how even Barry Trotz alluded to say, he said it, that there's kind of a target on the back. Everybody knows the Islanders are coming. They know what to expect from us. That's what he said. And what has the first 9 games been? Nothing close. Nothing even close to that.
Even years ago, I say years ago, like 16, 17 kind of stuff. What made this team, forget about structure for a second and all that kind of stuff. What made the Islanders really good, and you got to remember, they had 2 back-to-back seasons. They had back-to-back seasons of 100+ points, right? When it's energy. That's ultimately what I'm seeing is the difference here. They're not gelling. That's a problem. But the energy around the team, just watching them, it's like they got a refrigerator on their back or whatever you want saying here. You know what I mean? Like there's just something off about their game. They're not playing with that energy again. And that might just be like the fourth line lighting that spark or something. It's just, you see glimpses of it, of like Pajot really turning it on, but I don't know why he doesn't skate like that all the time. And I don't know. There's something off about the energy of the team. I don't know what that is.
It might be something as simple and as silly as there really being no fans. Listen, how many times, after that return to the Coliseum, almost every single post game, every single win at the Coliseum, it was, the energy in the building, the fans, we feed off that.
Yeah, it's a good point.
It's playing in an away building and taking abuse from the opposing fans and feeding off that and coming together as a team, that cohesive unit, that chemistry, that band of brothers kind of talk.
But like in the bubble, they figured it out. I understand what you're saying. In a long season, it's a completely different game. It's a different ball game.
Right.
But they seem to figure it out, and they played with that Islander energy that they've just been known for a number of pre-Trotz. They just, when they were playing with it, it was noticeable. It's what made that fourth line the best fourth line in hockey. It's what just made Islander hockey. Barry Trotz honed in that whole thing that they already had.
Yeah.
Like we didn't see major moves. We saw a major subtraction. Some guy that they drafted in 2009. But that's kind of like he just honed all that in.
Right.
I don't know that like what's going on. It's not, and I've been thinking about this, and I'm stopping myself from saying sometimes there's a coach that helps them get to a certain point, and then another coach takes them to the finish line. That is not that is not what I think is the problem right now. I'm not there yet. But
no,
the rest of this season, I said 10 games was kind of my, it's either going to go well for the rest of it, or we really got to evaluate what's going on with this team. And we're right there, right? Like they're not even going to be 500, true NHL 500, if they win on Tuesday tonight.
Yeah.
And they need to build some kind of momentum. They need to take, okay, we've got a point streak going, right? They got to take some positive away from this last weekend, back-to-backs, where all right, we got a point streak going. And they have to take these games this week.
Yeah.
I want to say they have to sweep this week, but they got to take 3 or 4.
Yeah.
And if anything, they have to get points in all 4 games. Like, I got to see something around the 10-game mark that makes me believe that they're ready. I don't know that Trotz is necessarily the problem. You can believe in the guy and question his decisions, right? That's like a lot of other things.
Yeah.
But you can question what he's doing and still believe in him. That's they're not mutually exclusive.
Yeah.
But we got to see something, and the longer it goes on, the more that thought's going to come into my brain. Like maybe it's something. I mean, he's on a 4-year deal, right? 4 or 5-year deal with the Islanders.
5. He's
probably not going anywhere. Lou really likes him. The players really like him. It's not he's not Jack Capuano or these other bozos that were not good coaches. For the most part, that like kind of let him run wild or wait or whatever. I think he's sticking around, but he's got to do something too. Like he's got to evolve.
I think
he's got to push something. Like like we said earlier, like we said a lot of times, he pushed the right buttons. Like we got to see him try to do that, and not just switch guys in and out of the lineup seemingly haphazardly. It doesn't seem like he's doing it with any, well, this guy's going to go in against this team because of this, or even the excuse like, yep, we got to get these guys games.
Yeah,
we got it, and we were playing well, and we thought give the young kids a rest. It wasn't anything like that. It was, yep, we got to just do whatever we can and throw something at the wall. It's like, that's a guy that's won a Stanley Cup and been in the league for over 20 years. That cannot be the approach. You don't want to hear that from Trotz. That means he's almost out of ideas. That's what worries me.
Well, he alluded to the fact that he thinks that he's close to finding his lineup in his last post-game conference. He said that he thinks that, they're on the cusp of figuring this out and turning things around. We will see if that happens. The upcoming week for the Islanders is a big one, and I think from here on out, it's just always going to be that way. Every week is going to be a big one. But they have the Sabres and the Penguins coming up against the Sabres. They're 2-6-2, and the Sabres are 2-6-2 against the Islanders in their last 10 games, and they're 4-4-2 on the season. The Penguins are not doing that much better. They're 5-4-1 on the season, so they see the Sabres and the Penguins this week. And I'll tell you what, looking at the standings right now, Philly's at the top at 7-2-1. Then there's Washington and Boston, but I'm not overly impressed with anybody in this division. So I as bad of a time we are having right now as watching the Islanders, the division in my mind is still up for grabs. There's still time to get this turned around, so we will see where this goes. But that's about it for us today. Thank you to everybody for listening right now. Please rate, review, and subscribe wherever you listen to the show. You can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Nasserman Hockey. And you can find our work at the Hockey Writers. You can support the show by picking up some NHP merch and donating to our Patreon. Our newsletter is out every Friday, and we're also planning some bonus episodes, we're planning some additional bonus episodes and content coming soon. So sign up with the Patreon and stay up to date. You can find Joe at Joe Pantorno on Twitter for a variety of wide sports coverage, including the New York Islanders.
And
until next time,
a big thank you to Amity Harbor Sports and the Long Island Hockey Company. Like I said, we got some cool stuff on the way. We'll be promoting them. They have some great merch. I've already made my order. I can't wait. I'll show it off as soon as I have it. I imagine it'll get delayed with the storm.
Yeah, probably.
But having patience. They're the shop local and all that. So definitely look out for everything that's going on with them, and make sure you follow them as well.
Absolutely. And now, until next time, everybody, let's go Islanders.